It's intermission time at the Artist Quarter in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And Ray Brown, it's been a long time since you've been in Minneapolis, it seems.
That's correct, Leigh. It's been, I guess, over 20 years since I've been in this area.
Well, I can remember doing a broadcast with you and a group, and it is a pleasure to hear you in the setting of the Triple Treat.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here, and it's just the second day, but I'm enjoying myself, and I'm seeing a lot of old friends that I haven't seen in many years. A lot of people have come by that I haven't seen in a long time.
Ray Brown, certainly this is a very special environment for the development of the bass. Although going back to Wellman Bro in Duke Ellington's band and to Ray Blanton, there was the Pettiford family here, and of course Oscar Pettiford and you came up in parallel.
Almost, yeah. He was just a hair ahead of me because he was one of my idols, you know. When I left home in 1944,
that was Pittsburgh, wasn't it?
Yes, he had made this record with Coleman Hawkins, with Shelly Manne and Eddie Hayward, The Man I Love, and Crazy Rhythm on the other side. And boy, that record just knocked me out, you know.
Well, certainly, in the course of time, you joining with Charlie Parker, Dizzy Gillespie, and Bud Powell, and that Gillespie big band in 46 and 47, formed an environment and a learning process for you that had to be out of this world.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know, that was another really exciting time in my life, was the joining of Dizzy Gillespie and Charlie Parker. You know, it was really a monumental time, especially for me at that young age, to get in a group like that. That was 1945, and that was Charlie Parker, Dizzy, Bud Powell, Max Roach, and myself. And then 2 weeks later, they hired Milt Jackson. So that was one of the great jazz groups of all time, you know.
Well, you as a young lion among young lions of the time must have felt some very special kinds of emotions. Do you recall any of those?
Well, you know, you got to remember that I was the youngest member of that band, and it was, of course, a complete source of fascination watching Dizzy Gillespie and Charlie Parker operate, you know. And they played all those very complex things, and they sounded like one horn together, you know. And I couldn't figure out how they could play that good, you know. It was fascinating to me. I mean, I would go to work early every night and just be waiting for them to show up, you know. And it was a great time of a good period in my life.
Well, looking back to those days, had you any idea where the music would lead you?
Had no idea. You know, we took that band to California, as you might have seen. They didn't portray it right in the movies. We took that band to California, and people thought we were spacemen, you know. That's funny. I was telling somebody not long ago. I said, you know, if you live long enough, you automatically become a Dixielander, you know. I went from a spaceman to a Dixielander. It's just a matter of living long enough, you know. And you can play the same thing, which was once space music, and now it's old-fashioned, you know. But we went to Billy Berg's. People didn't know what we were playing, you know.
And you were bringing it warm from Minton's and other places.
Yeah, that's right. Well, this music came right from New York to California. They had heard about it, and they brought us there to perform it, you know. But then the people didn't understand it, you know. They didn't understand it at all. In the movie, they fired the band after 2 weeks, but actually, we didn't get fired. We finished the engagement out, you know. We were there for 6 weeks.
Playing this challenging new medium called bop, your fingers must have gone through some very special discipline and training. The dexterity.
Well, you know, it's just, you're a product of your environment, you know. If you get with a band and they play fast, you play fast, you know. You adjust to it, you know. If you get with a band that plays slow or plays bossa nova or plays this, whatever it is, you adjust to it, you know. And I've had two different distinct groups I've played with that played very fast. One was Dizzy Gillespie and Charlie Parker, and the other one was Oscar Peterson, you know. So I've done my share of fast playing in my life.
And as you approach the 80s and 90s here, you've matured your work in a very fascinating way. And it occurs to me that somewhere along the line, you became involved with a cello and and a hybrid instrument.
Yeah, well, actually, what happened was I heard Perdido, which was performed by Oscar Pettiford, of all people, on a record, and it fascinated me so much that I went and went to see Oscar. I had known him, but I didn't know him that well. We became very good friends, and we used to jam all the time. So when we would play this cello, we'd take turns playing it, or there would be sometimes 5 and 6 bass players in a room, and we'd have one bass and one cello, and we would all take turns playing each instrument. And but the tuning pegs used to slip, as they do on a legit cello. So this is when I talked to this company and said, the K company, and said, why don't you make a cello with a fingerboard that feels like a bass and tuning pegs like a bass, so it won't, slide out of tune all the time. And that's when we made this new cello.
Was this the forerunner of the piccolo bass?
Oh yeah, sure. Well, I mean, piccolo basses had been around, but nobody was playing them in jazz at that time.
And so you had once again gone beyond the European formality of developing an instrument.
Well, I wouldn't call it developing an instrument. I think it's just an adjustment. It wasn't a complete new instrument. What we did is we made a cello and put a wide fingerboard on it. We put bass tuning pegs on it, and we tuned it like a bass. So a guy who was a bass player wouldn't have to make a large adjustment. And it's not it would be more advantageous to use cello tuning because you'd have more notes to employ, except that you have an intonation problem. So it was better to tune it like you tune a bass because then it was easier to play in tune.
Ray Brown, thanks much for taking time during intermission at the Artist Quarter. It's a pleasure to touch base with you again.
That's right. And I just want to say that it's lovely to be back in Minneapolis after so many years. And I'm not going to stay away this long again. I'm going to possibly come back here later on this year with my own trio, with Gene Harris and Jeff Hamilton.
Look forward to that.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.